meeting today, and within our cabinet meeting, we discussed many topics from pandemic to natural disasters, from economy to the education and international matters, so that we discussed many issues regarding to Turkey in great depth. Unfortunately, the drought, the wildfires, and the flood disasters that we have to endure for a while, we had very sorrowful days. Due to the drought in Anatolia, unfortunately, many of the lands couldn't be harvested. And the wildfires, which have been in our agenda for more than 4 weeks, has already turned into a global problem. The wildfires that erupted in 54 different provinces affected approximately 150,000 hectares of a land area, and 82,000 hectares of those lands are in Antalya, and 62,000 hectares of those lands are in Muğla. In the other hand, 3 million hectares in Russia and more than 3 million hectares in the United States of America and 3 million hectares in Canada and more than 650,000 hectares of a forest area unfortunately burned down in Mexico. And many of the European countries are also struggling against the wildfires. Although the suspicion regarding to arsony and sabotage by the terrorist organizations still persists in our country, it is still obvious that we are fighting against a climate problem. The temperature reaching and exceeding beyond 40 Celsius degrees and due to the humidity level at the level of 9%, unfortunately challenged us to put out the fires. And our state, which erupted, our state against the wildfires, which erupted in the Manavgat at the beginning, fought against those wildfires, and we stand by our citizens. Despite the ones who tried to abuse these wildfires, we accomplished to overcome those wildfires. 9 unmanned aerial vehicles and more than 1,000 fire extinguishing vehicles. More than 6,000 personnel have been allocated to the region, and together with many and thousands of volunteers, we intervened in those wildfires. And at the same time, more than 8,000 personnel from the municipalities and more than 1,000 vehicle support have been provided. Together with Köyceğiz, all the big wildfires have been put under control, and in the region the cooling studies are still ongoing. Only in the wildfires which erupted after 28th of July, in addition to the forest, 72,000 hectares of arable lands and 1,000 hectares of the greenhouses and more than 620,000 tons of agricultural products have been negatively affected. More than 395,000 big livestock and more than 4,000 of small herds and more than 600,000 poultry animals unfortunately have lost their lives. And as the wildfires were quite intense, there were the allied and friendly countries who sent the fire extinguishing planes to Turkey, and on behalf of my nation, I would like to thank each one of them. One plane coming from Russia in order to put out the fires unfortunately crashed in Kahramanmaraş, and as the whole nation we are really saddened by the fact that more than 5 Russian citizens have lost their lives for the sake of extinguishing those fires. And of course the loss of all our citizens are also wrenching our hearts. On behalf of my nation, I would like to state that we will never forget our heroes who put a great fight night in order to extinguish the wildfires. In order to compensate the losses of our citizens due to the wildfires, we are still working day and night. The damages and the losses have been determined. There are the buildings who are severely damaged. Only in Antalya, more than 2,800 separate areas have been determined. Within maximum 1 year of a time frame, the new households will be given to our citizens who have lost their households. All the animals who lost their lives will be given back to our citizens. And free of charge, all the plantations will be again given to the owners. In order to orient our farmers to value-added products in the field of agriculture, the necessary steps will be taken. In line with the Article 169, the burnt-down forests will be revived again, and those areas will not be used, even not for agriculture. For each one of our 84 million citizens, 250 million of new trees will be planted. Up until now, we have planted more than 5.5 billion trees, and we have increased the forest area of our nation by 2 billion hectares. And no one should have any suspicion whatsoever that we will plant the new trees to the burnt down areas. From the onset of the wildfires, our Minister of Forestry, the Minister of Environment, our Minister of Interior Affairs, and also the Minister of Transportation, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, have always been in the region. And from time to time, our other ministers visited the region, and they have participated in the works regarding to their field of expertise. Our MPs and also the managers of the public institutions also shared the burden in order to manage coordinating the studies. Red Crescent and AFAD institutions have always been in the region. At the same time, Turkish armed forces, land forces, at the same time our gendarmerie have mobilized all their resources to the region. And thanks to all those studies and activities, they always visited the region, and we always kept close contact with our colleagues in the region. And we have extended many support to our citizens who have been affected by those natural disasters, and we have delayed their debt as well. Of course, we have taken our lessons from this disaster, and the plans regarding to fighting against the wildfires have been reassessed so that we will make sure that we will be more ready against such kind of natural disasters. But in this framework, we will take the necessary steps in order to enlarge and broaden the responsibilities of the relevant institutions and bodies. And in a comprehensive manner, the necessary steps will be taken regarding to fight against the natural disasters. Once again, we hope that all those incidents will pass. My august nation, as Anatolia was fighting against the drought, and as the southern part of our country was fighting against the wildfires, unfortunately, the flood was a disaster for the Black Sea region in Rize and Artvin, and also in the western Black Sea region in Bartın, Sinop, and Kastamonu. Due to the high infall of the rainfalls, there were floods. In Kastamonu, 453 kilograms of a rainfall. In Derekani, 386 kilograms of rainfall. In Bartın, 362 kilograms of rainfall per meter was present. In Bozkurt district, the average rainfall is 35 kilogram per August, and the yearly average rainfall was 174 kilograms. But unfortunately, during this disaster, the rainfall exceeded the level of 453 kilograms. And unfortunately, we have to witness similar scenarios and similar pictures in the other provinces which have been affected by the disaster. Those figures are a couple of times more than the average rainfall for the whole Turkey. So no infrastructure can actually endure such kind of a heavy rainfall. The flood, which exceeded the level of 5 or 6 meters, unfortunately swept away everything going through the sea. Of course, as it is the case, there were problems due to the settlement practices and construction practices, but we should never overlook to the fact that we faced with an unprecedented disaster for the first time. As the flood started damaging the settlements, all of our institutions immediately try to intervene to this process. Our Minister of Interior Affairs, the Minister of Transportation, the Minister of Culture, and all relevant managers and administrators follow activities in the region. Since some of our settlements have lost the road connection, the interventions had to be carried out via boats and through our air forces. And then the land connections of those settlements have been provided with the portable bridges constructed by the land forces. Again, the research and rescue personnel, together with 1,920 vehicles, with 4 patrol boats, with 48 boats and 22 helicopters, and 2 unmanned aerial vehicles, and 3 gendarmerie exploratory planes, with 52 IMKE vehicles and 18 fire extinguishing trucks. So in a nutshell, hundreds of those vehicles, together with the mobile communication vehicles, are serving in the region. And at the same time, the mobile generators have been carried out to the peak of the mountains, and they have been left there so that the electricity is provided once again to the households in the mountainous areas. And our citizens who were under the flood have been rescued, and with the safe and secure vehicles have been evacuated from the region. And regarding to the food needs of our citizens who have been negatively affected by the flood, the necessary precautions and measures have been taken, and at the same time the research and rescue activities are going on. And at the same time, we have determined that more than 400 of our households are severely damaged. And the industrial zones which have been negatively damaged by the flood will be reconstructed again. The project of the households are ready, and we will start constructing those households in the soonest time possible. Electricity, the potable water, canalization, sewage services, and the wastewater treatment facilities will be constructed so that the infrastructure problems will be tackled as soon as possible. Whenever we cannot reach to those places by using the land, we have brought the mobile power plants, and as we have done all of those services, the other needs of our citizens will be provided whatsoever. We have declared this region the disaster zone, and as a result, the disaster zones and the citizens living in those areas will benefit from delaying their taxes and their debts. And 73 million Turkish liras have been allocated to this region. And in order to eradicate the traces of the disaster, we have initiated a donation campaign within the auspices of AFAD, the Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency. And up until now, we have provided a support by 7.4 million Turkish liras of a donation to this campaign as the members of the cabinet. We are so sad that we have lost many of our citizens. Unfortunately, we have lost 78 of our citizens due to the flood. The number of our citizens who are missing are still searched for, and hopefully they will be rescued. Unfortunately, the majority of our citizens who we lost were from Kastamonu. And in Sinop Ayancık, unfortunately, again, we have lost many of our citizens. One of the missing person in Bartın, unfortunately, have been found dead. Once again, may God rest their souls, and I also would like to extend my condolences to my whole nation. It seems that the rainfall would continue in the Black Sea region, and we really would like to warn our citizens to be alert and careful against the possible flood, and I make a call upon our institutions and public bodies to increase their precautions and measures. My august nation, it seems that the disasters will continue. Wildfires, drought, and floods. These are the disasters that, as the Republic of Turkey, we are alert and we are prepared with all our hardwares. Our bodies and institutions, AFAD being in the first place, have created many success stories, but the disaster so far signifies that we should increase our capacity. The state should stand by its citizens, especially in the time of crisis and especially when its citizens have difficult times. It doesn't matter how big the disasters are. The preparedness of the state should increase accordingly. With regards to our preparedness against the earthquake, we have been working for a while, but I do believe that we should reassess our plans against the flood disasters and wildfires. So our coordination should be much more effective, and our search and rescue teams should be much more effective. And for actually a better inventory regarding to our vehicles in the face of disasters should be strengthened. We will strengthen AFAD, the Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency, even further, and land forces and the gendarmerie, who has a very strong infrastructure, we will make use of their resources much more effectively. Just like we protected our nation from the ones who are setting traps to our economy and from the terrorist organizations, we will never leave our nation alone in the face of natural disasters. I would like to say to my citizens that you can be assured that we have the power to compensate any damages incurred whatsoever. We can never return the lost lives. And I can state once again that we are taking every necessary precautions in order not to make Turkey captive to the losses incurred during the 1999 earthquake. After Izmir and Van earthquakes, our nation knows how fast we reconstructed our buildings. Regarding to the flood disasters in the Black Sea region and the wildfire disasters in the southern part of our country, we will do the same. We will reconstruct all the buildings which has burnt down, and we will plant the trees from the scratch which have burnt down. Every infrastructure which have been destroyed by the flood will be reconstructed again with a better version. And at the same time, we will make sure that there won't be any deprivations whatsoever. If God is willing, we would overcome all those challenges and all those problems. What matters is that we should embrace to our brotherhood, and we should embrace our solidarity and unity. As long as we have no problems regarding to our solidarity, brotherhood and unity, then there is no barrier in front of us as we look brightly and hopefully to our future. The ones who are supporting our cause with their heart and with their mind, and every one of our citizens who are supporting us in our fight against those natural disasters, I'd like to thank each one of them. Search and rescue activities and regarding to the studies of the revival of the infrastructure, there are many public officers who are working day and night, and I would like to thank each one of them for their hard efforts. I also would like to thank anyone who participated in the activities in the disaster zones. Hard times will pass, and then there will be the ones who extended a helping hand to our nation, and also the traces of the ones who were planting the seeds of instigation would stay. There were the ones who tried to plant the seeds of instigation from politics to economy to journalism. There were the ones who tried to provocate and try to abuse the sorrow of our nation, and we will never forget their bad deeds. Despite all the barriers which have been set forth, there were the ones who fought against those disasters, but we know that they will be assessed by God, the ones who try to provocate and put dirt on our sacred cause. It doesn't matter who walks side by side with whom. We will continue to march forward to our targets together with our nation. My august nation, the world is struggling to fight against the negative impact of the COVID-19, which erupted for the first time in 2019. And Turkey showed his difference with our support programs and the measures that we have taken so far. Thanks to the endeavor of our healthcare professionals and thanks to our strong infrastructure, although we had challenging times at its peak, we overcame the pandemic. We once again witnessed, and our citizens know quite well, what kind of an important role our city hospitals played during the pandemic. From the masks to the vaccination, we never had any challenges in terms of the supply of the aforesaid products, and we never had problems in terms of the supply chain. By making sure that the production goes on uninterrupted, we didn't have any dramatic drop-downs in the field of employment, and quite contrarily, we had a leapfrog increase in the employment. In the first 7 months, we have seen that our export exceeded over $200 billion, and we are also witnessing a fast revival and recovery in the field of tourism and service sector. And Turkey ranks among the top countries in terms of the rate of vaccination. Thanks be to Allah, we are in a very good position in terms of the vaccine supply and procurement. We are procuring our vaccines from more than one sources, and we are putting those vaccines to the service of our citizens in the fastest manner possible. And hopefully, until the end of this year, our local vaccine will be produced and the mass-scale production will be carried out. By exceeding more than 84 million of vaccine, we already almost covered the whole nation. And for the first dose, 46 million of our citizens have been vaccinated, and for the second dose, 35 million of our citizens have been vaccinated. And in terms of the 2 doses, we have covered 55% of our citizens. And the third doses have been vaccinated to more than 7 million people. But unfortunately, there are the ones in our country who have still suspicions against the vaccine. The vaccination studies will be carried out based on the voluntarism. I mean, as the President of the Republic of Turkey, I have been vaccinated 3 times, and I am present in front of you. And we wouldn't hesitate to make use of any other methods if there were any against the pandemic. Right now, unfortunately, there are no other methods other than the vaccine in order to protect ourselves against this pandemic, which is changing and varying greatly. If we want to live our lives in peace in many fields, from traveling to receiving services, it really depends for each one of us to be vaccinated. During the recent times, the ones who are intubated, the ones who are losing their lives, the majority of them are unfortunately comprised of the unvaccinated people. That is something that I would like to underline. 33 of our provinces, including Istanbul and Ankara, exceeded 75%. That's why their color code became blue. The cities which has been vaccinated between 60 to 75% has the yellow code, and below 60% they have the orange code. Mardin, Bitlis, Muş, Gümüşhane and Diyarbakır provinces are unfortunately in our red list. In those provinces, less than 55% of our citizens have been vaccinated. Those aforesaid provinces being in the first place, once again, I urge all my citizens to be vaccinated as soon as possible. In order for our nation and our country to get rid of the negative impacts of this pandemic, in order for us to live our lives freely and in welfare in every aspect of our lives, including but not limited to tourism and education, we really have to be successful in this process. There are many students in primary, secondary and high schools and universities who are awaiting to turn back to their schools at the beginning of September, and there are many workers who would like to go back to their working place, and this really depends on the progress that we are going to realize in the field of vaccination. As the face-to-face learning will start as of September. The teachers and the personnel who have not been vaccinated will be asked to get a PCR test at least twice weekly. And we would ask for our university personnel to regularly take PCR tests. For the events like theater, concerts, and matches, the obligatory PCR tests will be required in those events and those places. We see that huge restrictions have been put in place for the ones who have not been vaccinated. So without having a need to put those restrictions in place, I certainly believe that my citizens will be voluntarily vaccinated, and I am certain that Turkey will be one of the top countries with the highest rate of vaccination. As we summarize with the motto of Tamam, for heating cleanliness, hygiene, wearing masks, and social distancing, obeying to those rules will be the basis of our strategy in our fight against the pandemic. Handshaking and hugging, which are the methods of greetings in our culture, unfortunately is on the rise. So I once again would like to make a call to all my citizens to be patient about those traditional way of greetings. I am certain that the brighter future is closer than ever. My august nation, in a very challenging geography, we lived uninterrupted with our states in Anatolia, with Seljukians and Ottoman Empire, and with the Republic of Turkey. Within the welfare borders of our states, we lived freely and independently. As the Ottoman Empire left the history from the Caucasus to the Balkans to the Aegean Islands, millions of our ethnic people migrated to Anatolia. The founder of our republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, being in the first place, many of the symbol names who had a very important role for the foundation of our republic, their birthplaces, unfortunately, have been left out of the borders of the Republic of Turkey. And many of our brothers and sisters who had difficult times abroad sought refuge in our Anatolia. Many of our citizens, I'm certain that they have listened the stories of migration from their fathers and grandfathers. Those brothers and sisters with whom we are sharing the same ethnicity migrated to our country, but some other people from different regions came to Turkey and lived in this place. The reason why the Anatolia is mentioned as the place of the immigrants is due to this reason. Unfortunately, the instability taking place in our closer geography, massacres and civilian wars have initiated a new flux of migration to the Anatolia. At the end of 1980s, we still remember hundreds and thousands of our brothers and sisters who came from Bulgaria to our lands. At the end of 1980s, millions of our brothers and sisters who escaped northern Iraq and sought refuge in our lands. Again, in the same years, we had brothers and sisters from Balkans and Caucasus. Hundreds and thousands of them have come to our lands in order to find themselves a job. And after the Syrian civilian war, millions of our brothers and sisters sought refuge in our lands. During the attacks of Daesh and PKK, there were many brothers and sisters who sought asylum in our lands. And there are many brothers and sisters who are coming to our lands. Of course, Turkey is no place that everyone can easily enter and stray into freely. Our state, first and foremost, is responsible for providing the safety and security and the welfare of its 84 million citizens. But at the same time, we cannot turn our backs to the ones who are knocking on our doors and seeking refuge in our lands. Our nation, with its great heart, will never abstain from sharing what it has with its brothers and sisters. At the moment, 3.6 million Syrian migrants and 1.2 million foreigners with the residence permit and more than 300,000 of the refugees under the international protection, reaching to a total number of more than 5 million foreigners are hosted in our lands. And of course, there are the irregular migrants who are entering into our lands illegally. In order to increase the safety and security in our borders, we are taking necessary steps, especially our border with the Iran will be protected with the safety wall against the smuggling and the illegal migration. Turkish land forces, our police forces, and our gendarmeries will be sent to the region in order to strengthen our safety and security. By increasing the capacity and the number of our repatriation centers, the illegal migrants will be repatriated to their countries. With all those measures and precautions that we have taken so far, in 2019, 455,000 of irregular migrants have dropped to the level of 300,000. This year we have also caught 78,000 irregular migrants, and half of them actually fled away from Afghanistan. And right now there are approximately 180,000 registered and 120,000 unregistered, reaching to a total number of 300,000 of Afghani people in our country. So the number of the Afghani people is not reaching to the level of 1.5 million as it is stated by the main opposition parties. So those figures are nothing but lies, so please do not pay any credit to those lies. The instability and the civilian war is present in Afghanistan, which leads to increasing number of irregular migrants in our country. Turkey has always shown a great endeavor for establishing the stability in Afghanistan, and one of the reasons behind it is the problem of irregular migration. As the United States of America has withdrawn its troops from Afghanistan, we have carried out many talks in order to take further responsibilities in the Afghanistan, but unfortunately before those talks come to an end, the Taliban seize the control in Afghanistan. Our priority is to establish the stability in the region, and since this is the case, we would even speak with the Taliban regime in order to provide the stability in the region. 500 of our Turkish citizens out of 5,000 have been evacuated from Afghanistan, and there are still many Turkish citizens less than 300 of them are still waiting to be evacuated from Afghanistan, and we will, of course, do so. We are aware of the fact that these irregular migrants are creating a problem inside of the Turkey, but I also would like to state that there are no other countries who host so many migrants in its lands with very few problems. And I don't think that it is goodwill that those individual incidents are presented with a bad will in the media. And we also believe that the discourse of the opposition party is based on bad wills. Of course, once again, I would like to state that Turkey is no country that everyone can stray into freely. We will never allow the ones who are violating our rules and laws, the ones who are violating our laws are immediately seized and evacuated from our lands. In Turkey, everyone should obey the rules, and our guests are also subjected to our laws, but we will never allow the ones who try to abuse this situation, and we will also never allow the ones who try to loot the belonging of our guests. With the measures and precautions that we are taking, and thanks to strengthening the mechanisms which would repatriate the irregular migrants, hopefully all those problems will be resolved in the sooner time. But we should also remind to our European friends this very important fact. The Europe, which has already become the center of appeal for millions of people, is strongly closing its borders, and Europe cannot stay out of this problem. With this attitude, the Europe is not only violating the international law, but also turning its back to humanitarian values. Turkey has no responsibility or obligation to become the warehouse of migrants and refugees. After we close our borders and after we repatriate those migrants back to their hometowns, it is the choice of migrants to go wherever they want. The issue of Syrian migrants in our country is a totally different issue. There are the ones, of course, who would stay in our country by developing language skills and harmonizing with our nation. But we will, of course, facilitate the ones who couldn't fit into our nation as they go back to their hometowns. This is also a responsibility that we have towards our Turkish nation. And at the same time, with their own wills, more than 450,000 of our Syrian brothers and sisters turn back to their hometown. And the number of the Afghani people who went back to their hometowns reached to 235,000. Hopefully, those comprehensive studies by our public bodies will be speeded up, and in the midterm, we will overcome this problem. In our belief, in our culture, in our history, we never attempted the lives, honor, and the belongings of the people who sought refuge in our hometown. If our guests perpetrate crime, of course, they will pay the price. Other than that, no other method or attitude towards our guests and the ones who are seeking refuge in our homelands have no place in our culture. The ones who are attempting on the lives and also the belongings of the oppressed one will not only face the state but our Turkish nation as well. Because at the end of the day, Turkish nation is not only well known with its independence fight, but we have overcome many struggles thanks to the prayings of the oppressed ones. May God help us all. May God prevent us from any disaster, from any slander and any instigation. With these feelings in my heart, once again I'd like to extend my gratitude, love and respect to each one of you. Stay healthy and safe.